This is the ZMAR Podcast. Elite Benefits of America helps small and mid-sized companies with their health insurance programs. And now, your host, Butch ZMAR.
Employers are in the healthcare business whether they know it or not, but the unfortunate part is they're still going by books that they read on it from 40 years ago. So a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners, partners, other businesses with other businesses, collaboration, they strike out to make something work, right? So a product, service, widget, whatever it might be. There's a number of reasons it could happen. It could be business opportunities between people or businesses. It could be a lost job and you need to produce an income and all of a sudden you end up in the business, right? You hire your next employee because you can't get to everything, but you have the contracts coming in and all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, how am I managing people? This was just a bridge a gap. And we have other ones that were just tired of working for somebody else and, working for the man, right? Paying the big guy gets to make the money and then you just get what the loose change is left. And so you figured you're going to go out and get the lion's share. Obviously, there's a lot of responsibility comes with the lion's share. That's why they're the ones collecting money for the house. But there's a lot of things you could work through. And then some cases you cannot be hired. You could be overskilled. It's a bad hiring market. There's no good offers. Like everybody's lowballing what you're looking for or even asking for. There's lots of reasons that you end up going in the business. But, Then you have a whole slew of other issues to worry about, from HR to payroll to marketing and sales and processes and all this stuff. So when I wanted to join the Navy, the whole purpose behind it, the driving force, was actually to become an astronaut. And so when I went down this road, it was actually a toss-up between the Air Force and the Navy because of the fighter jets. And so originally I wanted to work on boxes and then become a pilot. But when I was going through that childhood reading and what I wanted to do, I was reading all the old books, right? And so, the original 7, John Glenn, Shepard, there's a number of them. They were, moved to the Apollo program on some of them, but, the Mercury guys. And so those were the books that I read, how they got there. And, so I wanted to be some type of engineer to fix something, not necessarily a test pilot. Some of those guys were test pilots, but that wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do. But I wanted to fix the spacecraft while in orbit, but not to be a hero, but just because it's a job and somebody needs to do it and everybody needs to come home safely. Obviously, we read stories, watched movies. They reenacted some of these events that occur in space or the assumption of what could occur in space. There's many of them out there. And so I wanted to be the guy, the engineer that worked on this. And because the reality is things happen, mishaps happen all the time. No matter how hard we work or how hard we try or how many things we do to put checkpoints in for prevention or how many times we do things on a routine basis, there's always a mishap somewhere along the way. So when I was in the military, working on these electronic boxes that go in the aircrafts, we even though we were trained, we were probably overtrained in some capacity, as well as just they call it on-the-job training, right? Supervised on-the-job training was a big deal, and there were sign-offs in some cases that you went through certain things. But even after all that and the routine basis and us working 12-hour shifts and doing all this stuff by a process that was created by the military, in addition to just things that occurred in battle, so to speak. But in our case, we're using tools, not firearms. And so, but we literally would blow up boxes, right? And we would try to fix them. They were never intentional. And all of a sudden, poof, smoke bomb goes off. And sometimes there were sparks, and it happens, right? And so thankfully there was never big fires. Occasionally I think there were, but not on me. But it's not like we were trying to do any of this. We're just trying to fix the boxes, because when that occurs, we have a whole bunch of red tape to go through, filling out documentation. What happened? We got to take pictures. We got to basically convince the maintenance officer that this was a mistake and it wasn't deliberate. And so we don't want to go through any of that, because we're going to get scrutinized before it gets to that point of the maintenance officer. And so my whole point here is that things really do happen, right? And so back when I was training for 50 miles, somewhere along the way, things happen, right? So your leg hurts, your stomach hurts, your ankle hurts, your foot hurts, your mind hurts, you got a headache. All of a sudden you got to go to the bathroom and there's no bathroom around. All these things occur, right? And so no matter what you do, or no matter how hard you train, no matter what the routines are, something will still blow up and change your course, and you have to change the path. Otherwise, it won't work. It'll just continue to not get the results you're looking for. So, but that was the guy I wanted to be in orbit fixing these boxes. But not for the glory. While I was we were in the middle of the ocean. We had 7 out of 8 airplanes down because of a box we were working on. I am well certain that Fleet Admiral knew us by a first name basis. I have no idea who he was, but I just know that even the chief warrant officer and the maintenance officers were getting some heat because of us. But again, it's not because of what we were doing or not doing. It's because these boxes weren't working in these airplanes. In hindsight, I actually think a lot of them were becoming obsolete. The squadrons were trying to blame us, even though I can even prove to this day some of the memories that I had where we would argue in the hangar bay about what's really wrong. And I actually think it was the wiring in the aircraft. But anyhow, there was just two heads butting, and we just had to make it work, right? And so our job was just to make it right. So we kept working. And we worked and worked and worked. We had 12 hours days, went to 18 hours days. We just kept working until they all worked. We were rewarded for it. We got the Naval and Marine Corps Achievement Medal, or known as NAM, and it is a great achievement. It's not given to everybody. It's when somebody does something honorable, typically outside the line of work, or just the proper initiative that goes above and beyond. And so the chief warrant officer of the division decided that he was going to submit the request because we just didn't give up, even though we were whippersnapper 19-year-olds trying to figure all this out. And so a lot of times we were just naive, trying different things. My supervisor at the time, he was completely against it, right? He just said, all you did was he always says you always did your freaking job. That's all you did, right? And he was right. That's all we did is our job, right? We showed up every day. We had a role to keep the pilots safe. We had to keep them airborne. We had to have supply stocks so that way they're all mission ready to go no matter what happens. That was our job. And I'm not asking for any credit otherwise. And I do it all over again, even with no medal. I had no idea that was going to occur. I wouldn't do it for the medal. There's no hero work. We're just doing the right thing and getting these airplanes back up in the air. But in the process of fixing these boxes, we had to change the course many times. We had to change directions. We damaged some things along the way because of trial and error. But I know even all the way up through the chief warrant officer, the one that was in charge of our maintenance division, before the maintenance officer, that he was okay with it. In fact, he rolled up his sleeves and tried to work with us on it. And it was that bad, right? And he has technical expertise to be in that department. It's not a random warrant officer. He's worked on many of these in his career. And so we just kept staying the course of working hard, but we definitely had to change our course along the way because what we knew didn't work. It's kind of like Thomas Edison that figured out 10,000 ways that a light bulb didn't work. I don't know if we added up to 10,000 times, but I would have ventured to say it was definitely hundreds of times. So even employers today, they blow up stuff every day for the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? The unfortunate thing, like me reading How to Be an Astronaut from all the old school books, right? The original astronauts, how they got there. Their employers are still reading the old books that worked 40 years ago on supply and a benefit program and what to do and namesakes and, different adjustments bought them years in premium savings, right? And it doesn't work like that, which is the same thing what I did where, not saying you can't get to become an astronaut through the military. It's just a different path. I was going a different route because of old school knowledge. And I realized that when I was in the military, and I knew that if I was going to stay the course, that I would miss out on decades of other opportunities. So I went a different direction at that point. Even today, there's actually a movie, and I forget the name of it, and I should have had it for my show notes, but there's a newer movie out that proves that this pathway has changed. And so compared to what I remember, this guy, I wanted to go fix boxes, which they still need, but this movie was about this, I think they called him a migrant farmer. He was an engineer by trade, very smart at math. He applied, I think it was 12 times to the astronaut program. When I was growing up, and even when I was in the military, I did not know there was an application for an astronaut program because the old books didn't talk about that. It was about going to the military, doing your job, and then you could put in a request for it at some point, and then it has to go through a chain of command. That's the old school way, which could still occur today, but that's not where most of the people enter the astronaut program. And employers handle their benefits the same way, right? From 40 years ago, this is how they were handling it, or a perception of what they believe that health insurance or benefits renewals should be handled, or how the program should be implemented. Every year that renewal goes up in flames. Poof, right? You're sitting there, every renewal just blasting it with the fire extinguisher, trying to put it out and calm it down. And obviously you're still working with the dust and the ashes after the renewal. And it's unfortunate. And in some cases that's fine, right? There's a certain expectations, but if you keep doing the same course in the way that you used to do it, that's where the problem comes in. You just keep doing it year after year the same way. And the reality is you think you're controlling some of it, and maybe the broker, an old school, especially with the larger groups, the broker will go back and say, well, I brought you from 14% down to 9%. I did my job, right? Maybe, right? It depends, right? We've done that. But again, we're trying to bend the curve for the healthcare for these employers, right? There's no transparency. You're not asking for certain things that we discuss on other podcasts, right? You have to change your approach. You have to have a multi-year outlook. Most businesses, employers, HR, CFOs, owners, they go year to year with these renewals. They combat it, they put it out, they make it disappear, and then they wait until next year and do it all over again. In fact, some people I met, they dread the renewal season every time. Every time I call them up for a pre-renewal meeting, they're like, I'm not ready for this. I'm just not. And so we banter back and forth and agree upon a date. Usually it's later than I wish it was, but it's a little bit more compromised because he's not ready for it or she's not ready for it. But it's about taking those small steps in the right direction to get better. And it's going to take some time to put these things in. It's a multi-year. You can't switch to us, for example, and all of a sudden next year you get a 10% increase, even though we saved you 10% the first time, and then argue with us and say, well, we're going to go to another broker. Well, it's a multi-year outlook. I can't control the 10% increase, but we've had renewals that we would move them and they would save about 10%, and then the next year they get a 2% increase. In fact, in some other cases, the premiums actually went down. And so it's a multi-year lookout, and it's what's averaging over a period of time. So like one case study, we have this one employer, he argues every year, he hates paying for this thing, and I guess what employer does. And we switched them to a new program that was outside the box that they were used to 5 years ago. And sure, every year he's complaining because even this last year, I think it was a 14% increase, but we have a claims report. We could see that there was actually legitimate claims going on in big numbers. So it's like, okay, well, you can justify that increase, right? And so, but if we did an analysis, and we have, for like his case, if we stay with the same program, and even if we had the same increases we were historically before, because they might even be higher now, but this guy is paying, he would have paid 50% more in premium if he stayed where he at in 5 years. 50% more. That's not a sales tactic. Those are real hard numbers. So stop reading the old books. Get your employee benefits playbook, and you can get that at elitebenefits.net/playbook.